little countries into world powers. Take the case of Portugal in the 15th and the 16th centuries. Or take the case of the Netherlands, a tiny little country becoming a world power in the 19th century. On the other hand, short-sighted leaders have unraveled mighty empires. Russians to this day believe that but for Gorbachev, the Soviet Union would still have existed today. It would still be muddling through. So leadership is pivotal to any nation. And we need a debate by itself as to why is this kind of naivete in Indian policy? Why do we repeat mistakes? Why do we do not learn from the past? This is a question that Arun has sought to address in his book. I don't want to basically summarize his thesis, but all I can say that it's worth reading his book.
Mr. Shourie, what's your, you wanted to make 2 points on this?
I'll make just 2 points. One is, as Brahma very rightly asked, we are trying to blame the other fellow. He deceived me. But Shyam Saran in a very important lecture has pointed out that in the Chinese case, we must understand that they would be surprised at this charge because they regard deception as a part of statecraft. I'll give you examples. Mr. R.K. Nehru, Shyam Saran gave this example. Mr. R.K. Nehru, the cousin of Panditji, at that time Secretary General of Foreign Affairs, he went to Zhou Enlai and during a conversation he said, sir, for some of the statements that China makes on Jammu and Kashmir, it is as if it is endorsing the Pakistani position. That causes problems in India. उन दिनों में हिंदी चीनी भाई भाई का बहुत था. So Zhou Enlai asked him, has China ever said that it does not recognize the sovereignty of India over J&K? So R.K. Nehru said, no, it doesn't. And came back and reported to Panditji that, and Shyam Saran says, I have seen the recording on the file. He said, no, Chinese, those are just statements because Zhou Enlai has assured me that they have never questioned India's sovereignty over J&K. Just few weeks before the October assault in 1962, R.K. Nehru again met Zhou Enlai and said, now sir, your statements are completely endorsing the Pakistani position on J&K, questioning our sovereignty. And last time you asked me, has China ever questioned the sovereignty of India over J&K? He said, that's absolutely true. Tell me, has China ever said that it recognizes the sovereignty of India over J&K? He just turned it around. When Panditji raised the question of Chinese maps, saying that these maps show large parts of Arunachal, in those days it was Nifa, Assam and all as part of China. Zhou Enlai said, no, these are old Kuomintang maps. We have not had time to verify them. When on a subsequent visit of Zhou Enlai to Delhi, Panditji again raised the question, those maps are continuing to show this way. He said, and last time you told me that you can ignore them because they are old Kuomintang maps and you have not had time to verify them. He said, absolutely correct. They are old maps. We have verified them and they are absolutely correct. So we have to wake up to this time when this 2005 agreement on political principles was crafted. One of the principles on which India took great solace was that settled populations will not be unsettled in demarcating the border. India took this to mean that Tawang, now China was giving up its claims on Tawang because settled population is not to be unsettled. But they immediately started again reiterating their claim to Tawang, saying it is the whole of Arunachal is a part of southern Tibet. So our diplomats asked them, settled populations are not to be unsettled. They are absolutely correct. They are not to be unsettled. The whole of the place will become ours and they will stay where they are. And so it is, as Brahma said, it is we. There's an account here I have given of a long letter almost 12 printed pages of Panditji writing to Edwina Mountbatten, my dear Edwina. He has been to China. He has been these great receptions, and his cavalcade would pass with 10 deep people, and he was swept away by the receptions that he was given in China. They were all organized. He writes to Edwina saying, my dear Edwina, the Chinese have never felt so liberated. My visit to China has brought the gale of freedom to them. He completely was carried away. A good man, a great patriot, devoted to the country. Officers kept warning him, the Indian Consul General in Lhasa, the Indian political officer in Sikkim. And you should see the strong words with which he put down their advice. So, Brahma is right, that it is self-deception. We don't want to face the facts. And the reason for this is that we don't want to face those facts because facing the facts means altering our conduct.
So if I may play devil's advocate at this point. You mentioned we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves because I wanted to come to the current state of the border talks a little bit later. But you mentioned the political principles and parameters of 2005. I raised this question with a senior Indian official about the settled areas vis-a-vis Tawang, etc. And he said, look, Siddharth, if we press this point too far, that settled areas means Tawang is part of India, are we then not conceding that unsettled areas of Arunachal, which constitutes the vast majority of Arunachal's territory, is up for grabs? He says, no. In all our negotiating positions with the Chinese, we have said the entire state of Arunachal Pradesh is part of India. So he had a very different take, because he says that, it's all very well for, yes, we have to argue and fight on Tawang, but not on this issue of settled versus unsettled.
No, but I'm telling you that that's what they put to the Chinese, and this is what I've been told what the Chinese said. Now, one of the expertise of Indian diplomats is that whatever happens, they claim in retrospect that that is what they had planned to ensure. Abhi kya hua? वो दौलत में गिरडी में आए, एक शपथ लगाकर थूक कर चले गए, और हमारा फॉरेन मिनिस्टर कहता है, no, it is a diplomatic solution. And he goes to China and shamelessly says that my ambition is to stay in China. तो ठीक बात है कि ऐसे लोगों को वहीं रहना चाहिए. मगर that is the Indian way. You think Chinese are not reading what is being said? That we have depended upon their just withdrawing from a particular place. This Pankaj Mishra, Siddharth, in his book, he quotes a Chinese writer writing in 1902 that the Indians are the only people in the world who do not mind losing territory. What an indictment. And the Chinese view in this is, practice is always the same. Grab. No, first claim. Repeat the claim. Go on repeating the claim. Grab. Let time pass and they will reconcile themselves to what has happened. Has that not happened in regard to Aksai Chin? You can say we don't have a claim, but we have been claiming. They grabbed it, and now there is not an Indian government, not an Indian politician, not an Indian scholar or journalist who will say, no, we should go to war to get Aksai Chin back. Arey yaar, jo gaya so gaya.
But are you advocating war to get it back?
No, but I'm advocating preparedness for not having the next Aksai Chin.
No, but do you seriously think, you and Brahma both, that given the fact that India has, now I know Brahma you question the quantity and quality of the Indian nuclear arsenal, but do you seriously think that a war by the Chinese to grab Arunachal is a possibility? And that India has nothing it can do to prevent that, or to fight in a different way than 62?
I think Arun's book
makes a very good case that India faces a very difficult challenge vis-a-vis China. The question is, how do we manage that challenge? Militarily and diplomatically, China has created a situation whereby it retains the initiative. That is, it can spring a surprise on India at a time and place of its choosing. Make no mistake, India is locked in a very defensive posture. By building Pakistan as a military counterweight against India, China has accomplished two goals. One, it has boxed in India. And two, it has precluded the possibility ever of India carrying out military preemption. To recover any territory or to teach China a lesson or whatever, India has no capacity, no room, no latitude of initiating war against China. The only thing that India can do is to fend off a surprise Chinese aggression. Our whole military strategy, our whole thinking, strategic thinking, is pivoted on this issue. From a military perspective, if you are a general or a strategist, to come up with a strategy to fend off a surprise attack by the Chinese puts you in a very difficult situation. Which means that even in the best case scenario, even if you are well prepared, you cannot win that war. If the Chinese attack you, you can reach a draw at the most, but you can never win a war from a very defensive posture in which India has been put. So this is India's dilemma. And if you look at the India-China frontier, which is the Indo-Tibetan historical border, it's one of the longest borders in the world. In fact, it's the longest disputed frontier in the world today. I'm answering your question only. I'm answering your question. Even the best military in the world will not be able to effectively patrol that entire border. Now, to make matters worse, because the problem is that in India, we've decided not only to be cautious, but to be overcautious. Caution is good. Erring on the side of caution is always prudent. But when you are overcautious, when you are strategically diffident, you create problems for yourself. The more feckless a policy, the more pressures it is bound to invite. To give you one example, the entire India-China frontier today is being patrolled not by regular army troops, but by paramilitary police. The Indo-Tibetan Border Police is in charge of most of the border, and in some pockets, the Assam Rifles. Both the Indo-Tibetan Border Police and the Assam Rifles are not under Army Command. They're not even under the Defense Ministry, believe it or not. They're administered by the Home Ministry. And whom are they trying to fend off? Regular Chinese army troops who are aggressively patrolling, trying to nibble at Indian territory. Now, this is one example of overcaution. You're facing increasing number of yearly incursions, and you have deployed paramilitary police who have a defensive mindset to fend off the aggressive designs of the PLA. So, in a way, I'm answering your question. The question is that India is locked in a position, a defensive position. It doesn't know what the Chinese intentions are.
Brahma,
when the Chinese want to,
Brahma, if there, I'll come to you in a second, sir. If what you, like you're saying that with the defensive posture, there is no way India can win a war that China initiates, right? At best, we can hope for a draw. Is the answer then that we should initiate a war?
No.
Or we should have a more aggressive
To answer exactly that.
domestic posture? What is it? Yes, sir. Yeah.
No, but that's, you're jumping the gun here now. You
What is
see,
it?
you're jumping the gun.
No, concretely.
I'm telling you, you asked me a question specifically about India's strategy in the possibility of war.
Yeah.
So I was answering that part, that these are the realities that India has to factor in, that if you are a military planner or a strategist, you know that you are not in a position to initiate war. That doesn't mean that we should initiate war.
Right.
We don't have that option.
Right.
We can only bide our time and hope the Chinese will not attack us again at a time and place of their choosing.
True, but I'm just trying to
So
understand what
that
is it
from
that
a
you are
military
advocating.
standpoint-
No, I'm trying to understand what is it that you would like us to do, because you're clearly dissatisfied with this current state of affairs.
No.
You don't like the fact that we don't have those options, right?
I'm sorry, you're
Yeah.
presuming things now. You know,
Okay.
you're presuming, you're making a presumption here that I want some more aggressive posture. Of course not.
Okay.
How do you presume that?
Right. Okay.
Where is a, saying that one has to be well prepared, one has to recognize the difficult situation in which India is locked, that India's military options are circumscribed,
Right.
that India, in the best of circumstances, cannot win a war against China, and that fending off a surprise attack by China has to be a priority for India, which requires robust defenses, does not suggest
Right.
in any way for India to be aggressive. In fact, even if India wanted to be aggressive, there is no possibility.
Sir.
You see, this is the one of the ways by which किसी आने वाले तूफान का रोना रोकर ना खुदा ने मुझे साहिल पे डुबोना चाहा. That by saying, if you go out on the sea, there will be a storm. So he wanted to drown me on the shore itself. Who is saying, what Siddharth is doing is the classic Indian way of saying either or. Either you stay and do nothing, or you launch a full-scale war. That's not what's being advocated. But at least be prepared for the next slap. You cannot have a situation in which all work on infrastructure in Arunachal Pradesh asked for by the defense services can be stopped by a minister for environment. Does that mean going to war? So it is not either war or nothing. It is doing things which will enable China, which will persuade China